What a race! It seems like Brazil doesn't seem to disappoint a single bit. This is a race where championships have been decided and history has been written. After all, Mercedes won't be winless for the first time since 2011, and the team has managed to secure a 1-2 finish for the first time this season. It was a race full of excitement and, we must say, disappointment, as the last thing we would have expected to see was Verstappen's behavior. What did Max do that aggravated Red Bull and Mercedes fans at just one race? Before we jump into what happened between Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez, we first have to jump into the sprint race because that was the first event where Max Verstappen aggravated the F1 fans. Verstappen started on the medium tires in what was perceived as a smart tactic for Sunday's race. However, the medium tires have showed to be not as reliable as the soft ones, and Russell was able to pass him without a bigger issue. On top of that, Verstappen lost places to Sainz and Hamilton due to the fact that he had no grip whatsoever, as he reported. Perez was running behind him, and the Mexican asked if he could take Verstappen's position due to the fact that he needs the points in order to beat Leclerc for the P2 spot in the Drivers' Championship. At this point, Perez was 1.8 seconds off Verstappen, and Leclerc was right behind the Mexican. Safe to say it wasn't really safe for Verstappen to give the position to Perez because he would have likely conceded it to Leclerc as well. Still, one couldn't help but wonder as to why Verstappen didn't even think of giving the position to Perez, now that he has a dominant lead in the championship. After all, it was Perez who helped him throughout his 2021 championship reign, right? We remember Turkey 2021, when Perez went out of his way to defend against Hamilton because the Briton would have attacked Verstappen afterwards. And boy, how could one forget Abu Dhabi 2021? Perez shed 8 seconds off Hamilton's lead, and we all remember Verstappen saying, "Checo is a legend" to the team radio after his move. Let's get back to Verstappen's shenanigans. Therefore, one couldn't help but wonder what went wrong with Verstappen. Why didn't the Dutchman help his teammate? But if you think this is the only move where Perez would have gained one more point on Leclerc, you are in for a big surprise. Two events have explained Verstappen as a driver and as a teammate during Sunday's race. One involved his old rival, Hamilton, while the other was with his teammate, Perez. Let's start with the least interesting one, and that is Hamilton. In lap 1, there was a crash between Ricciardo and Magnussen, and on the restart, Hamilton was very close to being overtaken by Verstappen. The Dutchman made a move from the outside at turn 1, and as both were entering the Senna corner, they made a contact, and Verstappen's front wing got damaged. Hamilton sustained damage too, but it wasn't as damaging as Verstappen's, and the Briton was able to continue the race without a bigger damage limitation. Both of them had their say, with Hamilton saying that this wasn't a racing mistake, mate, while Verstappen said, "He closed the door on me. I had nowhere to go." Honestly, the neutral viewing point would say that it was a racing accident, but it was more of Verstappen's fault because he tried to overtake in an impossible place. That is why he was granted a 5-second penalty, and this is something that has probably interfered more with Hamilton's fans than Russell's, due to the fact that the older Briton was able to pull forward even more. It seems like karma has caught up to Verstappen, with him having a slow pit stop on top of the 5-second penalty, as the total standing time was 10 seconds. Nevertheless, it was evident that his race wouldn't be a podium finish, but rather for decent points. And decent points are what he was able to obtain, but not in the manner that everybody else expected. This is where the boiling point reaches its pinnacle, and it involves his teammate Perez yet again. Perez's strategy was ruined due to the fact that Red Bull bet too much hope on the medium tires, and that is something that cost the Mexican a lot of places. Still, it was evident that his car would have finished P6, just behind Alonso. Although Leclerc seemed to be out of the race after the incident with Norris, the Monegasque was able to bring the car back on track, and on top of that, finished 2 places ahead of Perez at P4. Verstappen had the faster car after the safety car restart in the finishing laps of the race, and when it became evident that Perez didn't have the pace to fight Leclerc, Red Bull gave the team order for Perez to let Max ahead, as the Dutchman's mission was to strip points away from Leclerc. Had he not been successful in this mission, he would have given the position back to the Mexican, and the damage of his bad race would have been mitigated as much as possible. Rest assured that this has worked perfectly for Perez, as there is nothing he would have liked more than his teammates stripping points away from his main rival for P2. However, when it became evident that Max doesn't have the pace to pass Alonso for P5, let alone Leclerc for P4, everybody expected that Max would have given the position back to Perez. Not only did he not, but he pulled 3 seconds away from the Mexican, and while everybody was quick to defend the Dutchman by saying that Ocon was just too close behind Perez and the Dutchman couldn't just park his car and let Perez go, the situation seems to be a different one. On the team radio, Max was asked to give the position back, but he said, "I told you already last summer, guys, don't ask that again to me, okay? Are we clear about that? I gave my reasons and I stand by it." What a bold response by the two-time world champion. Obviously, if they were left to race clean, he would have likely passed Perez, but the sportsmanship here is at the lowest level possible. After passing the checkered flag, Perez had a lot to say about Verstappen's move, adding, thank you for that. It just goes to show who he really is. He wouldn't have won his 2 championships without me." But what does Verstappen have to say about this? It goes without saying that this was more interesting rather than the 1-2 finish of Mercedes, who struggled the whole season in order to win their first race of the season. They only have the second spot to fight for with Ferrari, so it's not that attractive to the media. What is attractive is the fact that Verstappen disobeyed team orders, and according to him, it won't happen again in Abu Dhabi. While explaining his actions, Verstappen said, "We talked about it, but I have my reasons for things that happened in the past. I am definitely going to help him win in Abu Dhabi." You couldn't have let him get the P6 spot, let alone the win? It's going to be hard to see this happening, but nothing would delight us more. However, many rumors say that Verstappen has an Achilles point for the qualifying that happened in Mexico, when Perez deliberately crashed his car during the qualifying session just so he could start in front of the Dutchman on Sunday. This has been confirmed by Horner, who said that the Monaco qualifying and the outcome of the race isn't something that sits well with Verstappen. Tom Coronel spoke about this matter, adding, "I know Monaco was a sensitive point for Max, where Sergio Perez deliberately crashed his car into the wall and got full points as a result. This was Max's payback." It's very hard to understand Max's actions, and if it hadn't been for Perez's sacrifices, rest assured that Max wouldn't have won the championships at all. This is putting Perez's tenure with Red Bull in huge jeopardy, and it's likely that the Mexican won't stay at Red Bull if he is treated this way by his teammate. Accepting the number 2 role on the team is one thing, but being publicly humiliated by your own teammate is quite another. Therefore, it's safe to say there's going to be a lot of trouble in Abu Dhabi if Verstappen doesn't leave the position to Perez. As of now, Perez and Leclerc are equal in points ahead of the last race in Abu Dhabi, and the fight for P2 in the Drivers' Championship is something that matters a lot to both of them. What do you think is next for Red Bull? Do you think that there is trouble in paradise and that Verstappen's actions are truly uncalled for? Let us know in the comments below.